Hello, Steve White. Steve White's 89. I've been doing a Hitchcock marathon. I was very dismayed to find out I was missing like 5 films from the 50s, which I thought I had on DVD, but I had on video. And when I was collecting up Hitchcocks, I guess I felt like I had them and just didn't buy them. That happened to me a few times. But yes, I did a review of Hitchcock in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s, but I was missing 4 films. So now I'm up to the 60s, and I have seen all of his last films, because his last films were in the 60s and 70s. So I'm going to do both of those decades in one video, because there's not enough to do too. But the first film, of course, is Psycho. Now, what happened with Psycho was he had reached sort of a height with North by Northwest and a perfection, and I think he felt kind of lost in the Hollywood sort of steamroller and you know, the big sets and the big budgets and the big stars, and I think he started to doubt his own artistry and if he was actually doing a good job on that level. Like, what I think he felt a bit lost. That's why he's been depicted in documentaries and films. But then he discovered Robert Bloch's novel Hitchcock's Psycho. And he wanted to do it. No one else wanted it. They're like, no, just stick to the Hollywood formula. You're making big dollars here. Why you want to do some grungy little, you know, dirty little, pulpy little, you know, horror movie from some, you know, novel? But he wanted to do it, and he basically had to raise the money himself. He did it. It was a huge hit. It was the biggest film of 1960. And everyone was eating their words, and you know, Hitchcock earned himself credit for another decade or so, which was good, because he didn't do much in the next decade or so that, you know, came anywhere close to Psycho. So, but that's okay, because, you know, he was already a legend with 20 years of amazing films underneath him. A lot of people criticise his last few films, and it's like, shut up. Just shut up. So yeah, what can you say about Psycho? It was black and white. It was just different from everything he'd done, but he just scared the hell out of everyone, and it was amazing. Now, The Birds. The Birds was his follow-up. It took him 3 years to do a follow-up, which is telling, because then, like, how do you top Psycho? But he found another idea. That was his biggest problem, was finding ideas he actually cared enough to make a film about in the later years. So he did The Birds. And The Birds is, you know what, I had issues with The Birds because it wasn't conventional. I want a conventional horror movie with big dramatic music, and he wasn't interested in that. He was telling it in very interesting ways, and I didn't appreciate it at the time. But I've watched the documentaries, I've watched the special features, and I watched the film with a bit more patience, and it has its own way of dealing with suspense, and it does work. But you have to embrace it, and you have to get it. And I get it now, so I enjoyed the film more upon this viewing. Probably helped I was viewing it on a widescreen TV. The last time I watched it was on video, on VHS, in widescreen with the big black bars about probably this big on the screen, like literally, like, it was awful. And a lot of the films that I'm watching now that I've owned on DVD or maybe Blu-ray for 10, 15 years, I haven't seen on a proper screen, because the last time I saw them was on an actual square TV set on VHS, or maybe early, you know, when I first got DVD, I still had a regular TV. But I do love The Birds. I love the setting, the town, Bodega Bay. It reminds me of where I grew up. I had a Birds experience once where I went home and I was visiting, like much like Melanie was. I felt very much like the city person, and so there was birds all around us at my niece's place, and they're flying around us and flying around the yard, and it was like being in the birds. And like, what happened? And then we left, and they didn't come back though. So yeah, I don't know. I guess there was another little strike, but they're not waging war on us. Now, Tippi Hedren it kind of works in this, but I don't get the icy cold Hitchcock blonde. I don't get what his obsession was and obsession with her was. I see some of the difference between her and, say, Grace Kelly, and similarities between even Marie Saint, and the elements I don't find interesting or attracting. I'm gay, so what does it matter? But yeah, I don't get why he appeared to have gotten so obsessed with her. Now, he was in the next film she was in, 1964's Marnie, which was originally meant for Grace Kelly, but was eventually used or given to Tippi Hedren, starred Tippi Hedren. But Marnie's interesting. I respect it more now, the resonance of her psychological trauma from what happened to her. Now we understand it more. It meant nothing to me when I saw it when I was younger. Now I kind of get it. It's more interesting now, but it was too interesting for the general public, and it wasn't a big hit. And now we get to, I guess I'm just going to do the 60s and 70s in one go. His last 4 films, not so good. And I think I watched them back in the day, but I just forgot them. But I watched them again in one evening. I'm like, wow, okay. Now, Torn Curtain is okay. The problem is the casting. The casting of Julie Andrews particularly was put upon him because she was a big star. She'd just done Sound of Music and Mary Poppins, and he shouldn't have done it. He regretted it. It's Julie Andrews in a Hitchcock film, and it's just this Julie Andrews running around. It's like, it doesn't work. She wasn't a Hitchcock blonde. I mean, you do kind of care because it's Julie Andrews, but it just doesn't work. And Paul Newman, he's beautiful, but Julie Andrews ruins the film. I hate saying it because I love Julie Andrews, but she ruins the film. She's just miscast. She didn't do a bad job. She's just miscast. The film itself has some Hitchcock scenes. The murder scene, what he was doing with that, like showing how difficult it is to kill someone instead of these over-the-top sort of... It was brilliant in its way. You can tell you're watching a Hitchcock film. You can see, not the thinking, but you can see what he's trying to do. And there's some other scenes that worked that well. It was just the casting that ruined this film. But I don't really love his spy dramas anyway. But this was a decent one. Now, Topaz. Oh my God, Topaz has one good shot in the whole film. There's a shot of a woman. She's been stabbed by her lover, and it's an overhead shot. And he drops her and lowers her, and she falls to the ground. And this striking purple dress just spreads out like blood. It's just beautiful, and that's the only shot in the film worth talking about. It's another spy thriller. It's got no stars. I think, unfortunately, being burned with Julie Andrews, he said no, and he should have had a star in it, just a good one that suited the character, fit the character, because there's no stars. The actors all do a good job, but I don't identify with any of them. I don't know who any of them are, and the main guy's kind of hot, especially in his uniform and everything, but there's that one shot that I felt like, oh, that was a Hitchcock moment, and that was it. And I'm not going to say any more about the film. It's just forgettable. Frenzy is interesting. I didn't like it the first time. I didn't get it the first time. I didn't appreciate it. I watched the documentaries, the special features. I'm like, okay, I can see in this scene what he was doing. I kind of get what he was doing, but it didn't really connect with me. I thought it was going to be really good, like, serial killer film. The main actor is really interesting. He's not the killer, the main guy though. Very, very hot, very interesting. Not a big star, but did well in the part. It's basically, there's a guy who strangles women with ties. We see one really disturbing murder scene, which is ruined by Hitchcock wanted all the women to stick their tongues out in an exaggerated means when we see their bodies afterwards. And it's laughable and ridiculous. And I think he wanted that, but I don't think people get the joke and they just laugh at it, not with it. So even this great death scene, this murder scene, which is really ugly, and it's supposed to be ugly, but it's just so it's a grape and strangulation scene, and it's long and it's drawn out and it's hideous and it's horrible and it's ugly and it's meant to be, but there's nothing enjoyable about watching it like this, like the shower scene. It's to compare those two things. I see what he was doing, but one is art and you can enjoy watching it. It's thrilling or scary. The other one is just gross and unpleasant, and I guess that's the only way to do a grape scene on some level. But yeah, now the rest of the film we don't see anything like that because it's like that's enough. But it's kind of interesting how the story unfolds. I won't ruin it, but yeah, his last film, Family Plot, was fun, but a little bit too slapstick in a couple of scenes with some bad process. Which I guess doesn't matter because it's so over the top. These people are not driving in a car anyway. So I'm like, did they do bad process deliberately to make it look even worse? And we're supposed to be in on that joke, or were they just being cheap? I don't know. But Hitchcock didn't know it was his last film. It was done in 1976. Frenzy was 1972, so he only did 2 films in the 1970s. Then he got too sick. They were planning another film, but he had to bow out and say, I just can't do it. And that's kind of sad. But the last scene of this was really interesting, and it would have been a great farewell to Hitchcock. There's a scene where the actress in the film looks at the audience and winks, and someone said, Hitchcock, you should go up to the top of the stairs and do that scene. And he was like, he thought about it, but he didn't do it. He should have just filmed it and just had both as an option. It would have been a nice little deleted scene, and they could have put that somehow as a little farewell wink to the audience. But they didn't do it. He kept with the original script. He had his cameo earlier. And his cameo, I should mention, his cameo in Frenzy is the best part. No. In the preview, they had him floating in the river and then talking as a corpse in the river. That was great. Family plot, it's fun. Karen Black's in it. She's great. The other actors are all interesting. Al Pacino turned him down because they couldn't afford him, but he didn't want to go through the star, budget thing again. But it's a fun little film. It's got some elements I really liked. The supernatural fake medium sort of was humorous, but it's not a great film. It's a good film. I see where he just was having fun with it, and I'm glad he had fun with his last film, but I would have liked it if his last film was something more substantial artistically and creatively. But I'm going to go. Feel free to share, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think of Hitchcock's last films in the 60s and 70s.